So one key thing that I really want to get through to anyone watching this video, especially if you're relatively new to the EVO world, a reason that you basically don't want to just drop in something like this when you remove something like this, or when you remove your OEM one, is because this filter here is not the only filter that you have. This is kind of a filter sock at the bottom of the pump, but then on this OEM fuel hanger, this part right here, this is a filtration system in here. So basically, if you're dropping in something like this, or if you're modifying this to get rid of that, please know that you should add an inline fuel filter to help filter any potential debris in your fueling system. What's up, everybody? It's Paul from Boosted Films, and in this video we finally got some more EVO content for you. I'm finally looking into doing some large upgrades on the fueling system of my EVO 8, and I'm learning quite a bit along the way, and of course I want to share what I'm learning with you. So my plan is to do a pretty detailed step-by-step how-to of how I'm going to put this Radium dual pump hanger into my EVO 8. But before I get there, I want to cover some of the basics in this video, maybe some do's and don'ts, just a little bit of guidance to get you on the right way to know what to do if you're looking at doing a fuel pump upgrade in your EVO. And I do want to preface this video, of course, by saying I'm learning a lot of this along the way as I go, so hopefully we can work together a little bit. I'm going to try to get some input from you guys, since I know I have a large following of EVO people, to maybe help make everything a little better when I do this install video. But until then, give me a little bit of slack. Feel free to correct me on certain things if I state something wrong. But we're going to try to educate everybody a little bit with this fuel system upgrade. First things first, I'll just cover like the common stuff. Like this is the OEM hanger, and a lot of people like to do what they call just a drop-in fuel pump, meaning you just pull out your OEM fuel pump, which is the piece right in here, and then you put in a larger fuel pump that can supply more fuel up to your engine. Well, the drop-in one for that is typically the Whirlpool 255. That's the standard pump that people can reliably just kind of drop in without much modifications at all. You can just kind of pull your old one, put your new one in, and it works pretty well. But of course there are limitations with that. You can only push, so much fuel and so much horsepower when you do that. But speaking in generalities, I will say just from my own experience, I've got the Whirlpool 255 running on E85, even though I know it doesn't officially say it's E85 compatible, but a lot of people have ran it that way. I've gotten the Whirlpool 255 in my car to push about 400 wheel horsepower, actually a little bit over, according to the dyno that I was on, and it's been working flawlessly so far. But I'm going to say, generally speaking, if you're going to go to a pump any larger than a 255, like drop in like this, usually you need to do more to do it properly. And we're going to cover what that more is a little later. I also want to say while researching this video that Radium Engineering has been a good resource. If you want to check out their website, I'm actually going to put a link to it in the video description. They talk a lot about the different pumps and the different naming that there is for all the different pumps out there. Some of them can be misleading when it comes to the numbers. Some of the Whirlpool numbers are just generally confusing, but they have a good tech document out there kind of explaining that. So I'm going to link to that, and you should read up on that, and that could be helpful to you. So if you get one key takeaway from this video, I really hope that's it. That, a lot of people modify these to hold two hangers, and usually they get rid of this filtration part. So again, if you do that, or if you take this is technically got the fittings to just drop right in and drop into your tank and connect to your OEM lines, which can be tempting. But again, don't do that unless you have an inline filter, some other filtration for this setup. So that's a quick overview about a lot of things I'm going to cover. So now I want to go into more details about all of this stuff. I'm going to cover a bit more about what Radium sends you if you order certain things from them. They have some pretty quality looking stuff here, so I'm going to show you a lot of what they send so you can get a better idea of what's all included in the stuff that you may order from them if you're upgrading your fuel system. They got hardwire kits. Another key thing that you should know, of course, is that you should upgrade anytime you go higher than the 255. Another thing you should do is upgrade your wiring to handle that extra current voltage, that's going to be going to the larger fuel pump. And then I'm going to do, to the best of my knowledge, explaining why we need to do the things you do. But hopefully this video is going to give you some tips to make sure you don't make any mistakes, any obvious mistakes along the way when planning to upgrade your fuel system. And finally, at the end, I'm going to make a little call to it now, but at the end of this video, I'm going to ask for your input too. If you have an EVO, if you've upgraded your fueling system, there are a couple questions I would like to crowdsource, if you will, and learn from you guys. I want to know, if I can, how much power you pushed from your single Whirlpool 255 pump. I want to know how much power maybe you made from your OEM fuel rail, how much power you made before you upgraded your fuel pressure regulator. I know power is a general term here, but just an idea of what people had done in the past. And then maybe your common mistakes, mistakes you made yourself, mistakes you've seen other people make. We'll try to get some comments in the comment section and crowdsource this a little bit so people can learn from the comment section as well. But now let's take a closer look at these fuel hangers. All right, so here's a comparison of this Radium dual pump setup to, again, our OEM hanger. This OEM hanger, note that it does not have the fuel level sensor in it. You will need one of those. This is just a spare thing I had, so I have that. I'll have to take it off my car once I start doing this job. But you'll need to transfer that over to this one to, of course, have your fuel gauge work. And the pump I went with, or the setup I went with here, is for 2 of the AEM high flow 340 pumps. So that's what I'm going to be running in my setup here. Now, something interesting to note is you may notice that, these actually kind of look a little bit small. They don't look any bigger than what's on this OEM piece as far as all these fuel fittings go. And that's actually correct. These are the same size currently. When this was shipped to me, these actually would plug in the same. They would plug in, your OEM lines could still snap on and work with this setup in some ways. Obviously, they're not laid out exactly the same, but the sizes are the same. So again, you could almost just drop this right in. But as I mentioned earlier, do not just drop this right in without adding some sort of inline fuel filter, which Radium has an awesome, if you get their plumbing kit, they have this inline fuel filter that bolts up underneath the car really well. But again, when you are swapping something like this, or if you're modifying this and getting rid of this fuel filtration setup, you need some other way to filter your fuel. One of these little sock things, I'm going to just say it isn't enough. Another thing I want to point out, of course, these are smaller. These are not smaller, I guess, they're the same size as the original, but they give you everything, or, you have what you need. But what's going to happen is I'm going to take this out and then replace it with this. And, this is going to be a lot larger. So we're really going to upgrade stuff. Same with this return line. What's interesting about the plumbing kit is you end up using your fuel feed line, your OEM feed line, and making it your return line if you buy the plumbing kit for this. But I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to the plumbing kit area. Otherwise, just generally speaking, this is going to be going to your crossover. This is your fuel return. So fuel that is unused, that was sent up to the engine, gets sent back to your return. This crossover kind of helps siphon or pick up fuel from the other side of your fuel tank in your car. And then, of course, your 2 pumps are going to sit in something like this. Of course, you have to put the hose in there. You have to put the plug in and wire it in place. So you can see where you'd have to wire all this stuff in. And we're going to go through that later, hopefully in our install kit. But the good news also is if you just didn't have one of these, or if you are doing a build and you don't want to buy an OEM hanger, but you don't want to run a dual pump setup quite yet, you could run this with just 1 pump as well. So if you bought this setup from Radium, you could just drop in 1 pump like this. You'd have to rewire it still, of course, to make it work. But if you didn't feel like you need to run 2 pumps yet, you could just do this and drop in just 1. So that is a nice option to have as well. This kit from Radium also came with the 2 separate sock filters. I think they're a little different than this one came with the AM pump. I'm pretty sure these are the ones we're going to use. I think they're designed a bit differently to work better with this setup, as opposed to this is the one you would use if you were potentially just trying to drop this in to this pump. Speaking of that, though, what's interesting about this kit is I'm not going to remember part numbers exactly, but what's interesting is if you're ordering this from Radium, it does not come with the pumps, But be careful what pumps you order, because if I remember correctly, this is the 1220 pump, and that's not the direct drop-in for this. So if you were going to order like a direct drop-in AEM pump that you wanted to put in to upgrade with your stock sending unit, I think that's like just the 1200 if I'm remembering correctly. So it's a little bit odd to think about, but when you're ordering this kit, if you're ordering it for the dual 340 AEM pumps, just make sure you order the right pumps to correspond with it, because if you just ordered 2 of the drop-in pumps, you know, for this setup, they're not the right ones for this. So of course, again, one of the main differences here is this is just your plug-in, and then this is where you'd have to wire up, of course, pump 1 or pump 2. As I mentioned, you have the ability to just run a single pump on here if you wanted to, so you could just wire in pump 1 and do it that way. But while we're on the topic of wiring, I think I've covered most everything I wanted to cover with these hangers. So now let's talk a little bit about wiring and the wiring kit from Radium. So this is the DIY fuel pump wiring kit that comes from Radium, and everything they include. I've been playing around with it a little bit, but I'm going to get it out here for you and show you everything that it comes with and try to explain the best I can as to how things work on it. So first, you just got your heavier gauge wire. Again, when you're putting in a larger pump or larger pumps, you just want to make sure they're getting all the voltage, current they need. I'm not super into electrical stuff. I don't like playing with it, honestly. But so if I'm using the wrong term, I'm sorry. But either way, they just kind of want you to have dedicated power to the pump, if you will. So what you would end up doing is using this. This is just, all this is a fuse. So you open this up, you would put your fuse in here, and then basically you would connect this to your battery, and then you're going to run this out probably to your length of wire to run it to then your relay. And what your relay is going to do is it's actually going to kind of tell this fuel pump when to turn on, of course, because if you just ran this wire directly from your battery, you know, to here, to your fuel pump, it would just always have current going to it, and you don't want that. So what you're going to actually do, and what this relay is going to do, is it's going to tell this kind of when to turn on, basically. And from my understanding too, I think I'm going to remove one of these wires yet. Again, I haven't fully gotten into this. One of these wires is going to be basically the power coming in from the battery. The other wire is going to be the power going out to the fuel pump. And I think this blue wire here is going to be like our trigger wire, our signal wire. That's going to say, hey, this is when it should be on, this is when it shouldn't be. So for your primary pump, it can just be on when the car's on, basically. Of course, the car wouldn't run if at least one pump wasn't on. And then, of course, you got your ground. So those are, again, the 4 wires you're going to use. I think we won't use this middle one here. But we'll try to make sure we got all that sorted out when we do the actual install video, and we have a little help from ASM. But 2 pumps, 2 kits. You need to do this again if you're running 2 pumps. You want a separate input. You want a separate wires to run the current to the pumps if you're doing 2 pumps. So if you're doing a dual pump setup, you should buy 2 kits or figure out how to make 2 kits work. The main difference that we're going to have, at least in my setup, at least the plan for my setup, is on the secondary pump here. We're going to only want that secondary pump to kick in when we're at boost. There's a different way you need to wire that one up to actually make it work. So I'm going to just speak in generalities with that and say that's what needs to happen. But we're going to learn more along the way as we actually go once we do install our second kit. Again, I'm not an expert on it, but the other piece then you need is an adjustable pressure switch, which we got from Radium here. So this pressure switch, what we can do with this is we can actually adjust, I think, from anywhere from 3 to 15 psi as far as when we want this switch to kick in. And in our case, we want to use this switch to have our secondary fuel pump kick in. So this is the adjustable pressure switch that I got from Radium. And again, the plan basically is to have a boost source here, a vacuum/boost line. So once this sees more than 3 pounds of boost or whatever we try to set it to, it sends the signal. We'll plug in this plug-in and have a wire going out. to basically complete the circuit so that our second pump turns on. And then basically once we're in boost, that means we got 2 pumps pushing fuel up instead of just the 1. Now, good and bad about that. The good, of course, you're not always like overfeeding your fueling system with a whole bunch of fuel when you don't need to. So that's a plus of running this setup where you have 1 primary pump and then 1 secondary that only kicks in when you're in boost. The drawback or the general risk of that is if this fails, then you might be in trouble. If you're expecting extra fuel and it's not being delivered because your second pump doesn't kick in, that's a risk you're kind of taking by running this. But of course, we try to mitigate that as much as we can. At least have a wideband gauge in your car if you don't already, so you can watch your air to fuel ratio and try to get a good idea with that. There's other fail-safes that hopefully we can build in when we do this. But I just want to let you know, of course, that is one of the drawbacks of potentially adding a switch like this, but also a reason I wanted to spend the money on a good one. All right, finally, let's talk about this plumbing kit that comes from Radium Engineering if you want the plumbing kit for your upgrade. Some key parts about this plumbing kit: it is designed to work with their full system, so that their system being the Radium makes an aftermarket rail, an aftermarket, fuel pressure regulator, stuff like that. So some of these fittings are designed to work with that. These larger feed hoses are designed to work with that. I mentioned a little bit earlier, but what's neat about it is for the return line side of it, what they end up doing is taking your old OEM fuel feed lines. So on the EVO 8, the feed line, that being the line that feeds fuel from the tank up to your engine, is larger than the return line. So what they do with this kit is they give you basically this brand new, I can't even fit it all in the camera here, but they give you this hose to run your new feed line. So the fuel that's going to be pumped up to your engine from your fuel pump is going to be ran through this line, through this filter, and then connected to your fuel rail. And then what you're going to do is utilize, this is what, if you had the full kit, this would be part of your return line, as far as I understand. And now this is a bigger return line, and it's set up to basically match close to what your OEM feed line was. So again, now what you're doing is changing what used to be your car's original feed line, and you're going to change it out to it's the return line. And another neat part about this plumbing kit is, as I mentioned, returning your OEM feed line to a return line. That's part of what this is going to help you do, or this little fitting here is what screws on to your OEM feed line. And then that would then connect to this return line that they send you. So they give you a little adapter for that. A little bit confusing, but hopefully it makes sense. That's just the general idea behind how this is supposed to work. And one thing I love about this kit is I did a little test fit on this already, and this fits great. You can see I scratched it a little bit, but this fits very well. This bolts up underneath your car. It protects this fuel filter. It looks like a very quality piece. So really no regrets buying this. It's serviceable. You can change the filter inside here. This looks like a great reason to get this plumbing kit alone, just the fact that you have this. And then also, if you just kind of hate messing around with doing fuel line stuff, to have these kind of already to length is great to have as well. You could ignore this. I was, again, doing some test fitting with it earlier and just making sure it wasn't getting dirty. But this is most of what comes with the kit. But again, this is set up to work with kind of their full system. So what that means is this shorter cable here is meant to run basically from this out point of the filter up to your fuel rail. But one thing you're going to notice is this is not obviously going to work. If you look at your OEM fuel rail, this connection is not going to just bolt right up. And again, I get it. Radium makes this so it works with their full kit. And by the way, they sell a full kit. Like if you want to spend a lot of money, you can get their full kit with everything for an EVO, which is awesome. Glad they offer that. But of course, I'm a little cheap. And I don't know if I needed all that, honestly, for my plans. So, a couple things that you might want. This is an adapter from STM, and what this does is this will mount up to your OEM fuel rail, and then let you screw this in to connect with this kit. So without this, with this, I guess I should say, I don't need to buy an aftermarket rail. So this was like 35 bucks from STM, so I bought that. One other thing I want to make you aware of too is, of course, the OEM gasket. This is the OEM gasket number. I probably should have talked about this a little bit with, this, but this is the gasket that goes under here. So if you want to buy a new OEM gasket right away, go ahead and do that. So that's about it, guys. That's all I have for this video. Again, I just really wanted to show you and break down a little bit about what my plan is, what I'm looking to do with this setup and everything I've kind of learned so far. But as I mentioned earlier, if you want to give me some feedback, comments, let me know. What do you think of the setup that I'm planning to run? Do you run something similar? What kind of luck have you had with running a dual pump hanger? Anything kind of like that. But as always, this is Paul from Boosted Films, and thanks so much for watching. I just want to say that domestic violence is never okay. If you or someone you know is experiencing issues with a partner and doesn't feel safe, please visit the website thehotline.org or call 1-800-799-SAFE.